There's a moment in every person's life when something happens, something small, something unfair, something unexpected, and it shakes you. Not because it's big, not because it's life-changing, but because it touches something inside you that reacts instantly. Someone ignores you, someone doubts you. Someone speaks over you, disrespects you, misunderstands you. And before you even realize it, you react. You tighten up. Your mind starts racing. Your emotions rise. You feel the need to defend yourself, to explain yourself, to prove something. And in that moment, without even knowing it, you've given your power away. Because the truth is, most people don't lose in life because of a lack of talent. They don't lose because they aren't capable. They lose because they react to everything. They react to opinions. They react to noise. They react to pressure. They react to people who don't even matter. And every reaction costs them something: focus, clarity, confidence, control. So today, I want to challenge you with a simple but powerful idea. Learn to act as if nothing bothers you. Not because nothing affects you, not because you don't feel anything, but because you choose what deserves your energy. There is a difference. You see, acting as if nothing bothers you is not about becoming cold. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about discipline. Emotional discipline. The ability to stay steady when everything around you is trying to pull you off balance. Because the world will test you. Constantly. People will say things. Situations will frustrate you. Life will throw delays, setbacks, and disappointments your way. And in those moments, you have two choices. You can react or you can respond. Reaction is immediate. It's emotional. It's uncontrolled. It's driven by impulse. Response is intentional. It's calm. It's controlled. It's driven by clarity. And the people who master their lives are the ones who master that gap. The space between what happens and how they choose to show up. Think about it. The strongest people you've ever met, the ones who carry presence, who command respect without saying much. They don't react to everything. They don't get pulled into every argument. They don't explain themselves to everyone. They don't let every comment affect their mood. They move with a quiet confidence that says, I know who I am. I don't need to prove it. And that kind of strength, it's not loud. It's silent. It's controlled. It's unshakable. Because when you act as if nothing bothers you, you're not saying nothing matters. You're saying not everything deserves a reaction. Let me say that again. Not everything deserves a reaction. Some things deserve silence. Some things deserve distance. Some things deserve to be ignored completely. And when you learn that, your life changes. Because suddenly you're no longer controlled by what happens around you. You're grounded in who you are. But let's be honest for a moment. This is not easy. Because we live in a world that constantly pushes us to react. Social media wants your reaction. People want your reaction. Situations are designed to provoke your reaction. Outrage gets attention. Emotion spreads faster than logic. And if you're not careful, you get caught in that cycle, reacting to everything, draining yourself without even realizing it. So, how do you break free? You start by understanding this: your peace is more valuable than your opinion. Not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. Not every insult needs to be answered. Not every challenge needs to be fought. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to stay calm, to look at a situation that's trying to pull you in and choose not to engage. Because when you don't react, something powerful happens. You create space. Space to think, space to breathe, space to see clearly. And in that space, you regain control. Most people don't realize how much damage they do in moments of reaction. A few words spoken in anger, a decision made in frustration, a response driven by ego. And suddenly, something small becomes something big. But when you learn to act as if nothing bothers you, you interrupt that pattern. You slow things down. You stop giving temporary emotions permanent consequences. And that is maturity. That is growth. That is power. Because real power is not in controlling others. It's in controlling yourself. And here's the deeper truth. When you stop reacting to everything, people start seeing you differently. Because calm is rare, composure is rare. And when you walk into a room carrying that kind of energy, steady, grounded, unbothered, it stands out. People trust it. People respect it. People feel it. Not because you said anything, but because of how you carry yourself. But this doesn't mean you never feel anything. Let's be clear about that. You will feel anger. You will feel frustration. You will feel hurt. You're human. The goal is not to eliminate emotions. The goal is to not let emotions control your behavior. There's a difference between feeling something and acting on it immediately. And that gap, that pause, that moment where you choose not to react, that's where your strength is built. Because every time you choose calm over chaos, you're training yourself. You're reinforcing a new identity. You're becoming someone who doesn't get shaken easily. Someone who doesn't get pulled into unnecessary battles. Someone who understands that their energy is limited and protects it fiercely. And let's talk about energy for a second. Because this is where most people lose. They spend their energy on things that don't move their life forward. They argue with people who don't understand them. They stress over situations they can't control. They replay conversations in their head that don't matter anymore. And by the time they get to what actually matters, they're exhausted. But when you act as if nothing bothers you, you become selective. You become intentional. You start asking yourself, is this worth my energy? And most of the time, the answer is no. No, it's not worth your peace. No, it's not worth your focus. No, it's not worth your time. And when you realize that, you stop reacting automatically. You start choosing deliberately. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. When you stop reacting, you also stop giving people control over you. Because some people, they want a reaction, they thrive on it. They test you, push you, provoke you, just to see how you'll respond. And when you react, they win. They control your mood. They control your attention. They control your state. But when you don't react, when you stay calm, composed, unaffected, you take that power back. You send a message without saying a word. A message that says, you don't control me. And that kind of energy is unbreakable because it's not dependent on anyone else. It comes from within. Now think about your goals for a moment. The things you want to achieve. The life you're trying to build. The person you're trying to become. Do you think you can get there if you're reacting to everything? Do you think you can stay focused if every small distraction pulls you away? Of course not. Success requires focus. It requires consistency. It requires the ability to stay locked in, even when things around you are noisy, messy, and unpredictable. And that's exactly what this mindset gives you. It gives you stability. It gives you clarity. It gives you control. Because when nothing bothers you, nothing distracts you. You stay on your path. You stay in your lane. You keep moving forward, regardless of what's happening around you. And over time, that compounds. Small moments of discipline turn into big results. Small choices to stay calm turn into a strong, resilient mindset. And eventually, you become someone who doesn't break under pressure. Someone who doesn't lose themselves in chaos. Someone who stands firm, no matter what. But let me leave you with this. Acting as if nothing bothers you is not about pretending the world is perfect. It's about understanding that your reaction is a choice. And every time something happens, you get to decide. You get to decide if it deserves your energy. You get to decide if it deserves your attention. You get to decide if it deserves a reaction. And most of the time, it doesn't. So the next time something tries to pull you in, pause, take a breath, step back, and ask yourself, is this worth it? And if it's not, let it go, because your peace is too valuable to be traded for temporary emotions. Your focus is too important to be distracted by noise, and your life is too meaningful to be controlled by things that don't matter. So walk differently, move differently. Carry yourself with a quiet strength that says, I am in control. Because when you truly learn to act as if nothing bothers you, you don't just protect your peace. You elevate your entire life. Inner stability makes external chaos irrelevant, and most people misunderstand what that really means. They think stability comes from having everything under control. They believe it comes from a perfect plan, predictable outcomes, and a life where nothing goes wrong. But if you wait for the outside world to calm down before you feel steady inside, you'll be waiting forever. Because chaos is not an exception in life. It's the default. Things will go wrong. People will disappoint you. Plans will collapse. Noise will surround you. And if your sense of stability depends on all of that behaving the way you want it to, then your peace is always going to be temporary. True stability is internal. It is built, not found. It is developed, not given. And once it's there, it changes everything. Because when you are internally stable, you stop expecting the world to make you feel okay. You stop needing everything to go right in order for you to stay grounded. You carry your own center with you, no matter where you go. And that is where real strength begins. Most people live from the outside in. Their mood depends on what happens. Their confidence depends on how others treat them. Their energy depends on how smooth the day goes. So when chaos appears, and it always does, they lose themselves in it. They get pulled into stress. They get overwhelmed by uncertainty. They get shaken by things they cannot control. But the people who have built inner stability, they operate differently. They live from the inside out. Their mindset is not dictated by circumstances. Their emotional state is not at the mercy of other people. Their focus is not easily broken by distractions. Because they've done something most people avoid. They've learned to sit with themselves. They've learned to understand their own reactions, to observe their own thoughts, to recognize their own patterns. And through that awareness, they've created distance between what happens and how they respond. That distance is everything. Because without it, you are automatic. You react without thinking. You get pulled into situations you never intended to be part of. You say things you don't mean. You make decisions you later regret. But with it, you become intentional. You choose your response. You choose your focus. You choose your energy. And that is what makes external chaos lose its power over you. Think about a storm for a moment. On the surface, everything is violent. Winds are strong. Waves are crashing. Everything is unpredictable. But deep beneath the surface, the ocean is calm, steady, unmoved by the chaos above. That is what inner stability looks like. It doesn't mean the storm isn't happening. It means you are no longer at the surface being thrown around by it. You've gone deeper. And when you operate from that depth, things that used to shake you no longer do. Not because they've disappeared, but because you've changed your relationship with them. You no longer take everything personally. You no longer feel the need to control every outcome. You no longer chase validation from people who don't understand your path. Instead, you stay rooted. You stay focused. You stay calm. And that calm is not passive, it is powerful. Because it allows you to think clearly when others are overwhelmed. It allows you to move forward when others are stuck. It allows you to make decisions based on logic, not emotion. And over time, that becomes your advantage. While others are reacting, you are responding. While others are panicking, you are planning. While others are distracted, you are focused. And that difference compounds. But let's go deeper into what builds this kind of stability, because it doesn't just appear overnight. It starts with awareness. You have to become aware of how easily you are influenced by the outside world, how quickly your mood shifts based on what someone says, how often your focus breaks because of something that doesn't even matter in the long term. Most people never stop to notice this. They move through life reacting, adjusting, adapting, without ever questioning why they feel the way they feel. But the moment you start observing yourself, things begin to change. You notice the triggers. You notice the patterns. You notice the moments where you lose control. And instead of being inside those reactions, you start seeing them from the outside. That awareness creates space. And in that space, you gain choice. Now, instead of automatically reacting, you can pause. You can decide. You can choose a different response. And every time you do that, you strengthen your stability because you are no longer being controlled. You are taking control. The next layer is acceptance. And this is where many people struggle. Because acceptance is often misunderstood as giving up. But acceptance is not about surrendering your goals or lowering your standards. It's about recognizing reality as it is instead of fighting it. Because when you resist reality, you create friction. You waste energy wishing things were different instead of working with what is. You get frustrated by things you cannot change. You stay stuck in a cycle of, this shouldn't be happening, instead of asking, what can I do now? Inner stability requires you to let go of that resistance, to understand that chaos is part of the process, that setbacks are part of growth, that discomfort is not something to avoid, but something to navigate. And when you accept that, you stop being surprised by challenges, you stop being shaken by difficulties, you start expecting them and preparing for them. And that preparation makes you steady. Another key part of inner stability is detachment, not from your goals, not from your purpose, but from outcomes you cannot control. Because one of the biggest sources of instability is attachment to specific results. You want things to go a certain way. You expect people to behave a certain way. You build an idea in your mind of how everything should unfold. And when reality doesn't match that expectation, you get thrown off. You get frustrated. You get disappointed. You lose your balance. But when you learn to detach, not from effort, but from outcome, you free yourself. You focus on what you control, your actions, your mindset, your consistency, and you let go of the rest. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you understand what's within your control and what isn't. And that understanding protects your stability. Because now your peace is not tied to results. It's tied to your process. No matter what happens, you know you showed up. You know you did your part. And that certainly keeps you grounded. There's also something else that builds inner stability, something that often goes unnoticed. Solitude, the ability to be alone without feeling empty. Because if you cannot sit with yourself, you will always depend on external noise to distract you from what's inside. You will seek validation, attention, approval, anything to avoid that silence. But in that silence is where stability is built. Because that's where you face yourself, your thoughts, your fears, your insecurities. And instead of running from them, you learn to understand them. You learn to manage them. You learn to outgrow them. And through that process, you become stronger. Because you are no longer avoiding yourself. You are building yourself. And once you reach that point, something shifts. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop being affected by every opinion. You stop looking outside for what should come from within. And that independence, that self-reliance, that is stability. Now, when chaos shows up, it doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels expected, manageable, temporary. Because you know that no matter what happens externally, you are steady internally. And that confidence changes how you move through life. You take risks without fear of losing yourself. You face challenges without collapsing under pressure. You navigate uncertainty without needing immediate answers. Because your foundation is strong. And when your foundation is strong, the structure can handle anything. But here's something important to understand. Inner stability is not about never being affected. It's about not staying affected. You will still have moments where things hit you, where something frustrates you, where something unsettles you. That's human. But the difference is you recover faster. You don't stay in that state. You don't let it consume you. You acknowledge it, process it, and move forward. And that ability to reset quickly and consistently is what keeps you stable over time. Because life is not about avoiding chaos. It's about not being controlled by it. And when you reach that level, everything changes. You stop overthinking every situation. You stop overreacting to every problem. You stop overvaluing things that don't truly matter. Instead, you become focused, clear, intentional. You know where you're going. You know what matters. And you don't let anything unnecessary pull you away from that. And people notice. They notice the way you handle pressure. They notice the way you stay calm in difficult situations. They notice the way you don't get pulled into drama. And without saying a word, you set a standard of strength, a standard of composure, a standard of control. And that presence, it speaks louder than anything you could ever say. Because in a world full of noise, the person who remains steady stands out. The person who doesn't react impulsively stands out. The person who stays grounded while everything else is chaotic stands out. And that's the person people trust. That's the person people respect. That's the person people follow. Not because they demand attention, but because they embody something rare, something real, something powerful. And it all comes back to this idea. Inner stability makes external chaos irrelevant. Not because chaos disappears, but because it no longer dictates your state. It no longer controls your mindset. It no longer defines your actions. You become the constant in an unpredictable world. You become the calm in the storm. You become the person who moves with clarity while others are lost in confusion. And that is what allows you to keep going, no matter what happens around you. Because when everything outside uncertain, your certainty comes from within. When everything outside is loud, your silence becomes your strength. When everything outside is unstable, your stability becomes your advantage. And once you understand that, once you truly internalize it, you stop looking for control in the wrong places. You stop trying to fix everything around you. You stop trying to make the world predictable. Instead, you focus on building yourself, strengthening your mindset, sharpening your discipline, deepening your awareness. Because you realize that the only thing you truly control is you. And when you master that, nothing outside of you can shake you the same way again. Not opinions, not setbacks, not pressure, not chaos, because you've built something stronger than all of it, something internal, something unshakable, something that stays with you regardless of circumstances. And from that place, you don't just survive chaos, you move through it with purpose. You grow through it, you use it, because instead of being something that disrupts you, it becomes something that reveals you. It reveals your discipline, it reveals your mindset, it reveals your strength. And every time you face it without losing yourself, you reinforce who you are becoming. Stronger, calmer, more focused, more in control, until one day you realize that the things that used to bother you no longer do. The situations that used to stress you no longer affect you. The noise that used to distract you no longer reaches you. Because you've outgrown the need to react. You've outgrown the habit of losing yourself in chaos. You've built a level of stability that makes everything else feel smaller, less important, less powerful. And that is when you truly understand what it means to be unshaken. Not because life is easy, not because challenges are gone, but because you are no longer dependent on external conditions to feel steady. You've built that steadiness within yourself. And that is something no one can take from you. No situation can break, no amount of chaos can destroy. Because it doesn't come from the outside, it comes from you. And it stays with you.